Governors play a crucial role in the strategic direction of any school, usually working most closely with the head teacher. The expectation is that governors will act as a critical friend. In this film, we're going to explore the way this role is interpreted differently at 2 primary schools. Holy Trinity is a Church of England primary school in Richmond, Surrey, with 206 pupils.
I see our governing body as an extension of the leadership team within the school. We are a small school, and so to make the school and help the school move forward as quickly as possible, it's really beneficial to have governors who are taking a very active role.
To get under the skin of the school, you just need to have a chat with parents, you need to have a talk with the children, you need to have a talk with the staff. So I'm always around.
On the other side of London, in Newham, is Godwin Junior School. There are 360 pupils on the roll.
The governing body at Godwin, they're really a hands-off governing body. Their very clear role is to guide the strategic direction of the school, to take the school forwards to sustain our success.
I think it's possible for there to be an appropriate grip on the school without being heavily involved in the day-to-day life of the school. We don't try and micromanage the management of the school.
At Holy Trinity, Harry James has been Chair of Governors for 3 years. In that time, he's overseen a marked change in the relationship between the head teacher and the governors.
3 or 4 years ago, the school wasn't doing particularly well. I don't think the governors were particularly switched on. There wasn't a particularly good relationship with the head, but the previous head has left. We've had some new governors. The whole thing's changed around and it's much better now.
As part of this regime, Harry meets formally with Penny for about 2 hours once a week.
I am lucky in that I was able to take early retirement from work, and therefore that gives me the time to spend in school.
Hi Harry, good to see you.
And you? How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
Good.
Yeah. So what's on the agenda today?
Well, there's a couple of things that I'd like to talk about. First thing is that I know that over the last couple of weeks or so you've done the performance management interviews.
Yeah.
So I'd just like to know how they went,
Okay.
if there are any particular problems.
Right. Well,
I've
obviously
always
in line with what
been
you put
a very
into the
hands-on
marking
chair of
policy.
governors, and partly that's because I've got the time, but it is mostly because I feel that's how I get to understand the school.
The first target was achieve 100% pupil progress of 2 sub-levels throughout the year.
One of our targets for the school development plan for the school as a whole is that every lesson observed should be at least good.
Yeah.
So how are we doing with that?
As well as higher level monitoring, Harry also keeps an eye on the smaller details of school life.
Perhaps you could let me know what's been happening over the last week.
Okay. We've had quite a lot of training actually in the last week, and most things I have to say I feel very comfortable talking to Harry about, because his role is very much as a support to the school. And I think that's really important, that I don't see him as a personal support to me, but it's actually for the school. So anything I think that affects the progress of the school, the pupils' welfare, the staff, I think that involves Harry.
Harry sees the role of governors as offering the head practical help where possible.
One of the things that governors have to do is recognise that a head teacher these days, secondary schools, primary schools, is an extremely busy job. They are absolutely bombarded, and especially in a small school where they don't have so many staff to delegate to, they have to take on a lot themselves.
When the school hall needed rebuilding, Harry himself took on the project management. Governors complete a survey designed to identify any skills they have which could be useful to the school. Today, Harry has a visit from the architect.
Some of the problems we had were with the windows not closing properly and with the blinds.
The blinds, yeah.
He said, Penny, I'm going to take on the management of this so that you can focus on the teaching and learning within the school, because that's your speciality, and that's really where I want you to make a difference. So the governors don't take away from me the things that essentially are my job, but they support in whatever very practical way they can, and that has made a huge difference.
Each year, the governors at Holy Trinity draw up a list of objectives for the school to focus on.
One of our objectives this year is to improve as a governing body, and part of that is to become more involved in the school on a more specific level.
One of the ways this is happening is by individual governors keeping tabs on the teaching and learning by working closely with subject coordinators. Jerry Stride is the literacy governor.
2B.
2B.
He's gone up one though. Yeah.
There's been some progress.
There has been some good progress, and the ones that are targeted, then we'll have a target on the intervention sheet.
Okay.
Having the responsibility for literacy means that the literacy coordinator gives me their test results every session that they do them, and I can see where children are making progress. I'm free to ask questions should I wish to.
In order to be the so-called critical friend, we have to understand what's happening. And I don't think just taking reports actually helps people to understand. They have to start digging, getting involved.
Jerry also monitors children's progress by listening to them reading.
Can you see any destructive words in those sentences?
I feel really comfortable that the governors are so well informed. Obviously, it means that because they have that information, that I'm perhaps more open to question about what's happening within the school or what progress pupils are making. It could be seen in some ways as a bit of a pressure, but if we look at it from we want the children to do as well as they can, and we want the school to be as effective as it can only be a good thing.
Over in East London, John Locke has been Chair of Governors at Godwin Junior School for 8 years. His view of the relationship between the governors and head teacher has changed in that time.
When I first came on the governing body, we were probably trying to be too active with the best of intentions. What's evolved is something that is a much more open system, and I think much better for it. The head and I have got a way of working which, if you like, is organised around what needs to be done. So we don't have a fixed regular meeting.
I'll speak to John by either email or telephone once every week or so. As far as the day-to-day running of the school, he totally trusts me to make the decisions.
The head is the lead professional for the school, therefore you expect the head and the management team to be able to take a lead in delivering what we've agreed we want. It's what looked at through one pair of eyes, the school is £1 million business. It's not big, it's not very complicated. So if it works properly, the governance should be light touch, because heavy governance or invasive governance would actually slow the school down.
So John and the governors don't expect too detailed a picture of school life from the head and the senior leadership team.
They can report by exception, which I think is what good organisations do. So if something goes seriously awry, we get to know about it immediately. There's no defensiveness about it. If something's particularly successful, they'll tell us about it. If it's just situation normal, they get on with it.
This leaves the governors free to focus on the higher level strategic direction of the school.
More recently, we've had the focus on IT, focus on sustainability, big focus on citizenship and partnership with schools internationally.
Our first partnership, our first sister school is Weir. Put your hand up, is Weir. Figure it out, please. Who do we communicate with? Our first one. Jamaica, thank you very much.
Pupils at Godwin Junior link with several schools around the world through video conferencing and email. In addition, teachers are encouraged to visit schools abroad. Dave Smithers visited China last year.
The governing body is deeply conscious that we have to get value for money, we have to get something back from that. And they've been very challenging to ensure that, yes, we have done the work, we've built a relationship with a school, we've actually benefited from seeing a different educational system.
What we've asked the head and management to justify is what value has this got? We expect them to be able to provide a coherent answer. And then we'll return to it and say, is this still the case?
As at Holy Trinity School, some governors at Godwin Junior support the strategic initiatives they've identified by giving hands-on help.
We have governors with particular skills. There's one especially I'm working with closely at the moment on a lot of work to do with sustainable development.
So we were looking primarily at what we could do within the school and actions that could be taken within the school to reduce energy use and to reduce waste.
One outcome of Francis's involvement is these playground murals designed by children. She's also initiated a session where children work out Dave Smithers' carbon footprint.
Flights, and is that in the last year?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a trip to China.
Ouch. We don't attempt to do the head's job for him. because he is a paid full-time member of staff, and obviously we're effectively doing this as volunteers. I mean, these are issues that I think are important, but clearly I wouldn't be able to do them unless he thought they were important as well. So I think it's a partnership on this issue.
John himself has driven the improvements in IT provision at the school.
I was instrumental in pushing for the fact that IT skills are as fundamental now as reading and writing. I was able to help steer quite a substantial investment towards not just Godwin but a number of schools, but at Godwin in particular it built the ICT suite we're sitting in and bought the first round of computers. We now have every child in year 5 and 6 has access to a laptop.
This relationship with governors clearly works well for Dave.
It is an ideal relationship for our school because I feel trusted and feel empowered by that to go out and do the job that I have to do. For the governors, they take that strategic thinking, I suppose, to some extent off my shoulders.
This relationship has not only resulted in success for the school, it was called outstanding in the last Ofsted report, but also in an award for John.
I put John forward mainly because I do personally feel that he's actually taken the school forward enormously. Without that heavy-handed nose into every cupboard and every lesson and every sort of aspect of life of the school.
But does the governor's light touch approach work only because Godwin Junior is a high-achieving school?
If the school was struggling or had issues of some kind, I don't necessarily think we'd want to put a lot more time in. I just think we'd change the focus of the time we put in as a governing body.
I'd expect probably in a school which perhaps wasn't doing so well, that maybe the governors need to be checking more closely on how judgments are made and on how strategies are developing.
Hopefully that would be time limited, because the object is to solve the problem and then go back to the status quo of things working properly.
So, at Holy Trinity, is it anticipated that the governors will become less hands-on as the school continues its upward trajectory?
I think when we get to our established position of being in the top quartile of most effective schools within the country, I still think it's going to be key that the governors have a very hands-on approach and do have that knowledge that they've got currently about the school.
I think what happens is that you go from good to outstanding. That still needs a lot of effort. It still needs a lot of effort to maintain outstanding. So I think there is a mistake of withdrawing because not always, but it can lead to complacency.
Despite these contrasting approaches, the relationship between the head and governors works successfully for each school. The common factors seem to be commitment to a shared vision for the school and mutual trust.
One of the most important things is clarity. It's having a clear and shared vision.
It's a relationship in which I've developed a lot of trust, and that's because it's been demonstrated to work. It's not false hope. It's grounded in evidence and experience.